I'm kind of curious. What is the dumbest thing an American has ever said to you?
Well, I remember visiting Warner Brothers, and our tour guide, in the beginning of the tour, he asked us where we all were from, and I told him that I was from Turkey. And every single time he would show something or tell us something, he would always say, well, you probably don't have that in Turkey. And I had to correct him every single time. It would be highways, but you probably don't have that in Turkey. Dumpsters, you probably don't have that in Turkey. Stray cats, you probably don't have that in Turkey. Netflix, you probably don't have that in Turkey. Ellen show, you probably don't have that in Turkey, and stuff like that. Like, where do you think I'm from? What do you think is here? A desert? Do you think we're riding camels? Like, I don't know.
So I'm American, obviously, but I got a story for you. This one time I was at an audition in Nashville and I was sitting next to this pretty blonde girl. I asked her where she was from and she said, I'm from Alabama. How about you? Nice. I'm from Oklahoma. Huh? I'm from Oklahoma? What is that? Excuse me? What is that? What is it? It's a state. Like in the United States? Yes. In the United States of America. I've never heard of that. You've never heard of Oklahoma? No, where is that? It's like right in the middle of the country. Like right above Texas, you know? Oh. So it's next to California? That is 100% a true story.
Okay, I'm an American, and I actually am from New Mexico. And when I lived up in Illinois, every time I told people, hey, I'm from New Mexico, they'd be like, did you get a green card? Are you here legally? What? New Mexico is the 5th largest state in America. You people need to go to school because you don't obviously know where anything is. Oh, and they also call me a wetback, so that's racist. Fun times.
So I'm gonna just preface this and say I'm from Canada, right? And the one time I ever went to Los Angeles, California, I was somewhere around Santa Monica Beach with my family, and I went to a skate shop and I bought myself a skate deck. And when I told the dude who was working there, who sold me the deck, when I told him I was Canadian, his response, like his mouth dropped and he was like, "You can skateboard in snow?" And I laughed and said, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, it's a frozen wasteland there, isn't it?" And it's like, "No, it's sunny, and like there's only snow for 85% of the year. The other 15%, you can skateboard like nothing, right?" And he's like, "Oh, well, if it isn't snowy all the time, how do you live in igloos?" I'm not lying at all.
Oh, I was made for this. Okay, so when I first moved here, I was in 6th grade, and I was getting enrolled to this middle school, and I was meeting up with the assistant principal. And basically, she asked me from where I was from, and I'm like, oh, I'm from Colombia, like I just moved here. And then she's like, oh my god, really? So do y'all live in trees and eat alligators for breakfast? Last time I remember, I was living in a very nice house, eating pan de bono with some chocolisto, but that's fine.
So this was in high school during one of our art classes. So as we're drawing, we do small talk, and somehow we got on a topic of overpopulation. Mind you, this was 2013 when the Philippines was getting messed up by floods. This one girl says, it's good that the Philippines getting messed up by floods, you know, because of overpopulation. And I'm like dumbstruck. And the girl next to her goes, dude, she's Filipino. And that girl looks over to me and she's like, oh, I didn't know she was Filipino. I thought she was Asian.
Okay, so I'm Canadian, but I went to elementary and middle school in Florida. During my 7th grade geography class, my teacher was doing a presentation on pollution. She showed a bar graph showing a bunch of different countries and how much they contributed to pollution. As you may expect, US and China was way at the top. But there was a piece of the graph showing how little Canada contributed. Me being a Canadian, I had a moment of pride and said, "Woohoo, Canada." To which my teacher responded, "Yeah, but that's because there aren't any cars in Canada, sweetie." And I said, "No, there are cars. My dad has one. We moved here in one. They have streets and highways and everything." And she said, "Sweetie, those are sleds." My geography teacher.
Okay, so I'm from Vancouver, where we have like very fair weather. It gets really hot in the summer and like only a little cold in the winter. But I'm in Cali for the first time, and these people are talking to us. They're like flirting and whatever, and it's fun and whatnot. And they're like, "Oh, you're from Canada?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh my, congratulations. What does it feel like to wear shorts?" I was like, "Pardon?" They're like, "Isn't this your first time ever wearing shorts?" Like literally, I wear shorts for like 4 months of the year, people. This isn't my first time, but thanks.
Okay, so this is when I was working in a bar in Edinburgh many years ago, and this guy kept on saying, this American dude was in, and he was like, "You're not Scottish. You're not," well, he didn't say Scottish, he said Scotch. "You're not Scotch. I'm a Scotch American, because my last name I saw on a clan map. And so that's how I know where my clan comes from. I've never seen your name on a clan map. I was born at the fucking Inverness General Hospital, you be dick."
Hi. Yeah, fellow American here. And this is still the dumbest thing an American has ever said to me, because I'm from Alaska, the 49th state, which somehow gets lost in translation to the 48 other states that came before us, who somehow forget that we're a state, because then we have people who come up to Alaska and they walk into my tour shop and they're like, "Hi, where's the currency exchange? Are you planning a trip to Canada? We are like right close to the border." No. I need Alaskan money. "Are you not from the United States?" "No, I'm from Kansas, but I need Alaskan money." "Ma'am, did you miss the giant American flag right outside I can see it out my window. There's also one at the post office just across the street. It's the same money. Stay tuned for part 2.
Alright, so I was in Pennsylvania, right, on a vacation. And we were visiting this Amish house with a guided tour and stuff. And at the end there was a little question round where we could all ask questions to the guide. And someone asked the question, do the Amish go to hospitals? And the guide answers, yes, they do go to hospitals. And then the next question is, how do they afford it? Well, yeah, the leader or whatever, I don't remember exactly, goes around 2 times a year to collect money from everyone. They pool that together, and when someone needs to go to the hospital, they take the money from that pool. And everyone taking the tour was standing there like, oh my god, that's so great, yeah, it's perfect. So I say, well, that's basically how it works in Europe. You pay your taxes, everyone pays their taxes, and if you need to go to the hospital, they take from that money and use it to pay the hospital. Which the guide looks extremely disgusted as she replies with, that's socialism.
I lived in Florida for about a year as an exchange student from Colombia, and somebody asked me what language I spoke, and before I said anything, he said, what, Mexican? That's not even...
Okay, so I was born in Venezuela, but I grew up in the US, and my parents and we've gotten asked if we have cars, elevators, traffic lights, fast food restaurants, sidewalks, houses and apartments in Venezuela. Yes, we do. Why wouldn't we have those things? I don't understand, but okay. My dad told me this funny story of how in the 70s my uncle dated this American girl and they lived together in an apartment in Chicago. And apparently she thought that in Venezuela people didn't have kitchens. And so when my dad and grandpa went to go visit them, she was like, come here. You see this? This is a fridge. And she started doing that to everything in the kitchen and they were like, okay, we know. And so months later she went to go visit them in Venezuela and realized that people do have kitchens. And you could tell that she was so embarrassed and she felt stupid. And my grandpa was like, come here. And he reenacted everything that she did when they went to go visit her. And so...
I already said this before, but I'm gonna say it again because some people could be so ignorant and stupid. So I went to college in the States and this American asked me where I'm from, so I told him I'm from Korea, but my family resides in the Philippines. And this dude had the audacity to ask me if people in the Philippines eat mangoes and bananas every day, and do they live in a hut or a shack? And this is exactly what I told him, word by word. And I said, bro, you do know that's fucking racist, right? And the guy's like, how is that racist? And I asked him the same question, and I said, hey, I heard Americans love to shoot people, especially in schools. Is that true? And he's like, that's racist. It's so ironic that US have one of the best universities in the world, but some people can be so extremely stupid.
Hi, Canadian here. Before I get started, just for reference, the US is here and we are right there. Okay? I'm gonna try to go in order from least ridiculous to most ridiculous, so stay tuned until the end. Firstly, I've been asked numerous times if you need a passport to enter Canada. Like we're not a whole ass other country. I've been asked if we ride polar bears, typical, if we have roads, if we have cars, if we go to school. These are serious questions, by the way, like they were being serious. But the worst one was when I went to Ohio to coach a basketball camp and I was talking to one of the coaches. He was the coach of a JUCO, okay? Black man in his 40s. And he said to me, wow, I didn't know they had black people in Canada. I obviously thought he was kidding, but then he said, wow, does that mean you're like one of the only black people over there? Like, did you move there from the States? You're American, right? You have to be.
So I'm travelling in Australia, I'm in a hostel in Brisbane and there's this American couple. I ask them where they're from, they tell me they're from Alabama. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing, I've never been to America. And they're like, oh really? But America's so close to Jamaica. And I'm thinking, what? And I say, oh well, I'm not from Jamaica. Oh, well, sure you are, you sound Jamaican to me. And I was like, well, I'm actually from Wales. And the girl looks at me and she starts giving me a glare. I'm like, oh God, what have I said? Like, have I offended them in some way? And they're like, you can't say you're from a fake country. That is so offensive. And I'm like, but Wales is a real country. No, it's not. It's an animal. Like, no, it's a real country. Who do you think Charles is? You know, Queen Elizabeth's son, like he's Prince of Wales. Oh yeah, he's Prince of the Animals. Everybody knows that he owns all the whales in the world.
The dumbest thing I can remember was like 5 years ago. I had been in the States for like 2 months, so I didn't really hate anybody yet. And this lady at work, I walk into her office and she's like, oh, where are you from? Because like I hear an accent. And I told her and she's like, oh, you know, no offense, but I'm going to offend anyways. But I love how Hispanic people, you guys just don't care about problems. You just care about the music, the food, and sex. And fiestas.
First of all, let me just start off by saying that it is incredibly difficult to come up with just one story for something like this, but I'm going to try. In 2009, I was doing this summer program for high school students in LA where I met this girl who I guess was super fascinated by the fact that I was originally from India. One day she asked me, she was like, how do you guys get around where you're from? I was like, what do you mean, how do we get around? We drive. She seemed genuinely confused and she looked at me and she was like, wait, you guys have cars in India? I was like, babe, yeah, I'm from New Delhi. It's the capital. Of course we have cars. What? She very seriously looked at me and said, I thought you guys rode elephants everywhere.
Oh my God, I have so many of this, but this would specifically stand out. I'm from Venezuela. So Latinos, we look very different from each other. We don't have a specific look that we all look, right? So I currently live in Atlanta, and Atlanta has a very good baseball team, the Braves, and one of their top players is Venezuela, Acuna. I was at this sports bar with American friends and we were talking about Acuna and how he was Venezuelan, and you know, Venezuela has great talent for baseball players. And he said, oh, Acuna's Venezuelan? And I was like, yeah, isn't that great? He's great. And he was like, oh, but he's black. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I didn't know Venezuelans were black. And I was like, what?
So I was an exchange student in the US and I would randomly get asked by questions. And then one time I said I was Asian because Philippines is in Southeast Asia. And then they literally said, Philippines is in Asia? I thought it was in Europe. Girl. And then one time I was in the bus, I got asked, do you have school? Do you have farm animals in the Philippines? Do you know what an iPhone is? Girl, would you think of us some sort of a different planet? Like, this is why you need to go to school. Oh my God.
Oof, I've got a lot of these because I married an American and I used to live in America, but this was my first experience and it happened when I was 19 and I was visiting my boyfriend's family for the first time. So I'm trying to make a good impression and I was sitting at a table of young women and one of these young ladies turns to me and said, so where are you from? Like, I had the audacity to be from somewhere else. And I said, I'm from Australia. I'm from Western Australia. And she said, oh, that's where my chinchilla is from. And I was like, your chinchilla? I don't think those are Australian. And she was like, well, they are, and looks at me like I'm the fucking moron who's calling myself Australian and doesn't know the chinchilla, the national animal of Australia. So I said, oh, I don't think they do. So this is 12 years ago, pre-iPhone in the pocket days. So she gets on the living room computer and Googles chinchilla and opens the Wikipedia page and goes to the region section, points to the word Argentina on a map of South America and says, see, there.
So I was living in New York at the time, and I'm originally from southern Spain, and I was at this dinner party in New York City, and I was talking to this guy, and he finds out I'm from Spain, and he goes like, dude, so how long does it take you to drive from Spain to Manhattan? And I was like, you did not ask that question. And I looked at my friends, and my friends were like, so I was like, I'm not gonna see this guy ever again in my entire life, so at least let's have a laugh at it. And I looked at him straight in the eye as serious as I could, and I was like, well, depending on the traffic and the fog, because, you know, the ocean, it might take 18 to 20 hours. And he elbowed his friend and was like, dude, I told you it takes longer to drive to Texas. And I was like, he did not say that. But he did. He actually did. Oh my God, it was one hell of a night.
Okay, so basically like 7 or 8 years ago, I was at Victoria Coach Station in London and I met this American girl and we started talking and she's like, oh my God, where you from? And I was like, well, I was born and raised in Romania, but I've been living in England for like 3 years now. And we started talking about different topics, blah, blah. And then we started talking about politics. And I don't actually remember what I said, but I was talking about the Romanian president. And he's like, oh my God, he did this and blah, and I'm not really into politics. And then she looked at me like she was flabbergasted, like, wow. And then she asked me, oh, you guys have a president as well? I thought it was just an American thing.
So being from South Africa and having worked in America for a couple of years, I've been asked, how did I get here, you know, in America. Told them we had teams of 4 in one rowboat and then each guy gets an hour to row. I've been asked, how did you learn to speak English so quickly? So I said, no, that's easy. That's just like a 2-day course, you know, easy. I've been asked, have you really got pet lions? So I said, no, I don't. I've got a cheetah, but my neighbor's got the lion. I've had, how can you be from Africa? Because you're white. So I said, well, have you never heard of an albino? Just, I don't know where they get the shit from. But it's quite fun once you start going with it. And they believe every fucking word.
Do you have Christmas in Ireland? Yes, we do. Do you have Thanksgiving in Ireland? No, we don't. Do you have Halloween in Ireland? We invented a fucking thing.
So, family vacation in Disneyland. Some guy hears us talking and says, hey, are you guys from Canada? My dad goes, yeah, we're from Canada. And the guy's like, oh, okay. We can see he's like, clearly wants to ask something. And eventually he gets up the courage and he's like, so, what's it like down here? And my dad's like, oh, we like Disneyland. It's cool. The guy goes, no, but like, what's it like driving? So my dad asks, well, what do you mean? And the guy goes, so do you get like cars at the border or how does that work? So me, being the eternal jackass of my family, interject. I say, yeah, they got a little training spot at the border, and you trade in your sled dogs, and they look after them. There's like a fee or whatever. But yeah, we get to drive and try it out. They even let me drive. I was like maybe 10 at the time. Then, no word of a lie, as my dad is expecting this random stranger to lose his mind, the stranger goes, wow, that Canadian education system is really great.
Back in college, I was working as a technical support representative in one of the biggest telcos in the US. One time, I had this very angry customer because she's been transferred from one line to another. That's why she's very enraged. But I managed to calm her down when I promised to do my best to solve her problem because she's now on the right line. While I am rebooting all of her system, including her internet, she asked, am I talking to a monkey from the Philippines? Then I was like, what do you mean by that? Of course, I have to pretend I don't know what she meant. And she answered, never mind, you can't even grow apples there. And I was like, you know what, ma'am? I wanted to tell you something. You know, in the Philippines, we are producing one of the sweetest banana in the world. And we're shipping it to the US. You know why? She asked why. Because in the Philippines, only monkeys eat bananas. That's why we're shipping it there.